Hardcore Henry's an interesting specimen. The whole thing is in the perspective of Henry, or whoever the main character is. And in this case, Henry is a robot who has, or I mean, a cyborg. He has robotic parts, still a human, I think. Again, well, I'll get to that. But his eyes have been replaced with electronics, so it's recording kind of. So what you see is, what he sees basically, and that's the entire movie is on that. But of course, being called Hardcore Henry, the entire thing is an action film. It's really brilliant of a concept because you could totally market it as found footage action. We're all about found footage horror, but what about found footage action films? Which of course you can't do as a person holding a camera. It'd have to be from the perspective of the person doing the action. So there we have it. Found footage action film, basically. It's a first person shooter, the movie, and in fact a lot of it I feel pays a lot of homage to first person shooters. Not good ones, mind you, but Call of Duty basically. A lot of references where, at least the Call of Duties I've played back in the day, I was like, what are you doing, movie? This is totally a scene from Call of Duty, kind of, in a way. So, I mean, I guess a little bit of Doom too. I haven't really plotted this out very well. I just kind of woke up and started doing this, so forgive me here. That being said, though, the whole first-person camera jerking action, a lot of flips, a lot of jumping from place to place and stuff like that. I didn't get motion sickness, which is really interesting because a lot of the times movies love to do the whole shaky cam bullshit, and that just I can't stand it a lot of the times, especially when it's overdone. Hancock was one of them. Hancock, and there's another Will Smith movie, 7 Pounds. Not an action film, but they were doing shaky cam, and I was like, I can't stomach this. This is too much. But yeah, Hancock for sure. Again, just the shaky cam, all the flying twists and turns stuff. It made me sick to my stomach watching it in theaters. This one didn't. I don't know if it was a situational thing, like when I went and saw Hancock or 7 Pounds, I was already sick or something. I don't know. But in Hardcore Henry's case, nothing. It was completely fine. So again, I don't know if that's just me. I don't know if anybody else has that issue with shaky camness. Again, it's not really shaky cam because you sort of, maybe it's, I don't know if it was filmed intuitively. That's the thing. I don't know if it was just filmed in a way where it doesn't make you sick, or if I just had the mindset, or I was just far enough away from the screen when I was watching it to not be affected. So that was a plus. Another plus kind of encompasses the whole purpose of the movie. At one point, at the very beginning of the movie, I hated it. You know how movies, most of the time, well-written movies are supposed to start off really big, get you into what's going on in the film, sort of thing. But in this case, the beginning sort of sets the premise as, the story. Because you don't get much of a story in a movie where the entire time it's you as a person doing action scenes. You don't get a lot of story. So that's what the beginning of the movie is. But it wasn't just that. It was when it started from the story to this buildup of all this action. I was just like, this is lame. This is dumb. Because the problem with having action movie that takes place in first person is you have to set yourself up for action in first person. You have to make it so something big will happen. There's a reason why this one person is going out and doing all this crazy stuff, kind of thing. But it does that, but it really stretches where it's going with it. I felt, and a lot of the times you could tell it was like, oh, since we have this gimmick, let's milk it. Let's do weird things, which I appreciate. But it's again, it makes the story seem really weird. Like, where the hell were they at the beginning of this movie? I have no idea. They were like in an airship or something. It didn't make sense to me. Um, but again, cool effects though. Again, I like the fact that they milked it. There wouldn't have been any point in making this film if they didn't take advantage of the fact that this is your only perspective, the camera's only perspective you're giving the audience. So let's do weird things to make it like blow your mind. But yeah, the story at the beginning just sucked. But around the end, for some reason, I had a grin on my face because it was so ridiculous, the action in it. At one point, it picks up this momentum where it's just nonstop, and it's brilliant. It's really well done. I could see the controversy. I'm not making the controversy, but I can see, which I'm surprised I haven't heard more about it, the controversy of watching a movie where you basically are the killer. Kind of the same sake as how people blame violence on first-person shooters because you're pulling the trigger and killing programmed people, video game people, not real people, video game people. But in this is real actors, pretending to die, obviously, but still, like, you're watching yourself be the one with a gun shooting another person, them dying, kind of thing. It's like, I'm surprised. I don't know what's Fox hasn't jumped in on this and cried foul. Not that it would. I mean, still. That's the other thing, though. It doesn't really stop to. As far as action movies go, not that I feel a movie called Hardcore Henry should, but a big problem with action films, and why it's so stupid that you can get like a PG action film and people are dying everywhere, is that they don't take into account the real life, the reality of death, of killing somebody. Usually the people doing the killing are completely normal, completely used to it, so they kill and that's it. No remorse, no stopping to think about what you've done, kind of thing. And in this one, they kind of pause. His first kill, he kind of stops. You kind of have this idea that he stops and thinks about it, but then like keeps going because he's got stuff to do, kind of thing. Which I thought was interesting because in a movie like this, again, you probably should kind of stop and take a moment to be like, hey, this is not something you should do in real life, kind of thing. Again, that's just media griping bullshit about violence. But again, I find that really interesting that first person shooter video games get a bad rap, and then this movie, which depicts it as realistically as possible, I haven't heard anything about. But then again, I don't follow the news. Anyway, sorry, my computer shut off on me. That's why I haven't done the cast or anything yet. Which it's going to be kind of hard for me to do the cast, because I feel like it's a Russian, Norwegian, some sort of European film, which now brings me to one of the good things and bad things. I'm trying to think of how to discuss the last thing on my good list, without spoiling the movie. It kind of steals the show from the whole, again, gimmick of you're seeing the whole thing in Henry's perspective. And that is Jimmy, played by Charlton Copley. Sure, why not? He is... it's hard to explain it. Henry has been constructed by this diabolical company, we'll say. It turns out that the boss of the company and also the antagonist of this movie is using this program to kind of build super soldiers like Henry. But Henry broke out because his wife, played by Haley Bennett, um, breaks him out, and then she gets kidnapped by the antagonist. So Henry, of course, the typical Henry's on a revenge, or on a rampage to get his beloved back from this big baddie with these new powers. That's the crux of the movie. But along the way, he gets help from a man named Jimmy, played by Sharlto Copley. Sharlto. That's weird. Copley. and did I mention the villain's name is Danila Kozlovsky? Because it is. Anyway, but Jimmy is really weird at first because it's the same actor, but then he'll die and come back later as what seems as a completely different character. So you're like, what the hell's going on? Again, not to spoil anything, but again, it's not really important to the plot. But it's really fascinating what Jimmy's story is, and I really liked it. It was really cool. Again, that was another gimmick thing, was this idea of multiple Jimmys and how they filmed around that, because obviously it's first person, kind of thing. He'll see a Jimmy run down a corridor, there's another Jimmy, it's like, oh, how'd they do that, kind of thing. A lot of that is really fascinating. I guess that's all I can say about that. He kind of carries the plot because he has his own story arc. Again, the whole beginning being, this is Hardcore Henry's whole story, basically, and this is what you get, and now here's a bunch of action. The movie does kind of stop for a bit to explain to you Jimmy's story, which holds a lot more credit, has caught my interest a lot more than Henry's. So yeah, it has nothing to do with Henry's story at all. The two are not related in any way. But kind of in the middle of the movie, you get Jimmy's story, this explanation of who this character is, and it's really fascinating. So yeah, that's a bonus. Now that I'm on the mode of the actors, now that I'm talking about the cast, Haley Bennett and Danila Kozlovsky, the female interest of our lead and also the antagonist, they're terrible actors. That's all I have to say about that. The acting in this movie was god awful. Again, Jimmy was solid. That's about it. Henry doesn't speak throughout the entire movie, so I didn't mention that, but yeah, he doesn't speak throughout the entire movie. So you have that silent protagonist, very video game. But yeah, I don't know how to explain it, especially Kozlowski or whatever his name is. He was trying to channel Tommy Wiseau. I didn't understand it. It was just bad. I can't explain it. Plus, the antagonist for some reason has these force powers. He can lift things up and throw things and crap with his mind or whatever. How? Why? We'll never know. It's basically it. A poorly acted Norwegian whatever the hell character that has superpowers, and there's your antagonist. What? Yeah, it bugged the hell out of me. It went beyond cheesy Bond villain. It was just why? It doesn't make sense. Why does he have magical powers? This is all about science. Please, someone explain how he can do this. No, okay, that's fine. But yeah, also the female lead is just a terrible actress. Her performance did not appeal to me again, and she's mainly in the beginning part. So that was one of the reasons they were just jumping the shark ridiculously with the whole story with getting into the whole action, but then here she is trying her best not to suck terribly at acting. So it just, again, that's why the beginning really bothered me. I was like, okay, this movie's gonna be terrible. But then once you took her out of the picture, you threw Jimmy into the mix, things got better, considerably. Speaking of Jimmy, one of his versions comes up in full sniper getup with the whole bush clothing and stuff. And that was one of the points where I was like, oh my god, they're referencing Call of Duty. That's ridiculous. And there's there's another point where, like, for some reason Henry has a rocket launcher or something, blows a bunch of guys up. It felt like Doom. Like, that was kind of what they're going with. It looked kind of like Doom, how he was shooting it. In fact, yeah, at one point the rocket was, like, right center of the camera, like in the bottom, which is how Doom worked. Like, your gun was in the middle of the screen. So that's probably what they're referencing. The only issue with that scene, of course, was that the CGI was terrible. That's like the only time I noticed that the effects were just poorly done. Everything else is pretty solid. So yeah, that was my completely non-structured critique on Hardcore Henry. I am so sorry. I hope that didn't throw you for a loop. I'm pretty sure I just kind of jumped into things I mentioned earlier on. But yeah. But yeah, European of some sort, Norwegian, Russian. It takes place in Russia, but like Jimmy is British, I think, so it's hard to say. But so, like, yeah, a lot of no names. So yeah, Hardcore Henry. I give it 2 out of 5. Again, it started off not well for me. The gimmick was great. The gimmick worked. It made for really interesting filmmaking. To me, you know, if this was the way to start this whole trend of a found footage action film, I feel like this did it right. You know, this was a good way to pioneer the concept if it does become other than just this one movie. So, but again, it had its faults. The plot was terrible. The acting was horrible. Again, except for Jimmy. But the filmmaking was interesting. It was really well done. It's not all one shot. They don't pull that. Luckily, because that would just be mind blowing. That would have given me a headache just thinking about the idea of all this being one take. But it does have its cuts, and it's not even like clever cuts like, oh, he blinked, so this is a cut kind of thing. A lot of the time it's, you know, he'll be told, oh, go to this house across the city, and then bam, he's at the house across the city. You know, kind of, it's like literal edits. So they kind of cut corners there. Not that it really matters. Not that I was expecting it to be like all 1 hour and 45-minute take with ridiculous action in the middle. But on the plus side, it had good action. If that's what you came in for, that's what you're going to get. It's crazy. Almost over the top, ridiculous. Again, first person shooter, crazy. So I give Hardcore Henry 2 out of 5. I don't know. 2 out of 5 hand grenades. Why not? They play an important role in this movie.